come alive again. Alive again. Oh, you make me feel like I'm alive again. Turn your magical. And then she'd say everything you want to dream away. Under this pressure, under this weight, we are diamonds.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever in the world you are connecting from today. Thank you so much for being part of our Hacking HR live chat series. We started this series at the beginning of the year. We have been inviting a number of great and very brilliant authors to come to the show and share their insights, their ideas, their recommendations, the research they have done with all of us in this community. It's been an amazing journey having all these ultra talented speakers and authors coming to these conversations and just sharing with us all about the work that they have done and making us better in the work that we are doing. I'm hoping that if you have been connecting and tuning in to this live chat series, that you are taking a lot of value out of these conversations. And if you have missed any of the previous sessions that we've had, just go to our website, hackinghr.io, and you will find in there all of the previous conversations that we've had in this Hacking HR live chat series. For those of you who are connected live right now in any of our social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, please let us know in the chat where you are connecting from. It will be awesome to know where everybody is. Just post it in the chat. If you have anything that you want to share during this conversation, whether it is a question, an insight, a resource, something that is related to this topic, please keep it related and focus on the topic. If that is the case, please make sure that you use that chat generously. It's there for all of us to have a conversation, not only me with my guest today, but with you as well. So please feel free to ask your questions, share your insights and resource and story, anything that you want to share in the chat related to today's topic. So super excited to talk about one of the topics that I am generally most excited to talk about, which is empathy. So today we're going to be talking about empathy works, the key to competitive advantage in the new era of work. So I am super excited to welcome my guest today, Sophie. Good morning, Sophie. How are you?
I am very well. It's lovely to be here, Enrique. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Super excited about this conversation. And let's begin here for our audience, for them to know you better. Can you please introduce yourself? Let us know more about who you are, the work you've done, and especially why you wrote a book on empathy.
Thank you. So I am a workforce innovation specialist. It's a name I came up with because it best described what I have been doing since the future of work wasn't really understood when I started in this space in 2015. But I do a lot of speaking. I've written 2 books about the future of work, including obviously empathy. I'm a LinkedIn instructor. I have several new courses, including 2 about Gen Z, one which actually launched last week. And I help companies transform to new ways of working, and particularly helping them adapt for Generation Z, but also basically sort of bridging gaps across generations and thinking about work differently and using all the new tools that we have so they can engage and help their multi-generation workforce perform well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Why did I write this
you wrote the
book
book?
about empathy?
Yeah.
So why did I write? Well, it's when I think about empathy. So empathy, first of all, the way I define it is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and feel what they're feeling, experience what they're going through. And when I really started understanding what the future of work meant, how much was changing, not just about work arrangements, because I started in this space, as I said, 2015, so much is changing that the way that because work isn't linear and static and sort of, much slower paced, now it's a very, very different we work in very different ways. We work in teams. We work on non-routine work so much more that we need to be connecting much more person to person in our teams across spaces and working at a faster pace. And that's when human-centric understanding, right? Really understanding you who, Enrique, you're in my team. I need to be able to understand what you're going through so that we can collaborate better, we can communicate more effectively. And that's where it came from. I didn't focus on empathy. I focused on how do we connect, and what is that? What's the word? What's the activity? What's the value that connects us in that way? And it was empathy.
Wow. I love everything empathy, right? And I know not only because the science and the data and the research tell us how powerful it can be to create great organizations and great cultures, but also because it's the right thing to do as humans, for one another, right? But then
Right.
you go to work, and then you tell somebody at work, hey, instead of focusing on improving just your products, your line, your service lines and your management, techniques and whatnot, let's focus on empathy. What do they tell you when you say something like that? What do managers, what do leaders tell you when you tell them that empathy can have results in business?
Well, there's so much data now, and much more data to show how things are changing and what leaders, what employees are expecting, how much leadership styles need to be changing because of the focus on this very, very different way of working. But I start always with where are we now in terms of technology? What is the marketplace? How are the marketplace changing? How are customer behavior is changing? How are we trying to connect with prospects? Technology is enabling us to focus on a customer of one. So we need to empathize with our customers first. We need to understand who they are. You can actually recognize that person in the street and, or should be able to, and kind of go, okay, that's the person. What are their pain points? So we're needing to empathize, first of all, with our customers. So I start with that point and sort of bring that back and say, well, if you're trying to understand and connect with that person, then you need to have some of that sensibility, that mindset, those values internally as well, because it really doesn't work if it's just externally focused. It needs to be connecting with and understanding your employees. So I focus on that, kind of like, nobody's going to tell me that this really strongly technology driven world is going to be sort of, we're going to uninstall the applications that so many of us, upped during the pandemic. And this is the world that we're living in, and it's not going to get slower paced. And therefore, the need to be able to connect, as I said earlier, in a very different way, and be able to understand each other, work very closely in much more unpredictable, uncertain, and high pressure environments. It is understandable. Leaders do understand that requires a new level of soft skills, a new skills that we haven't been using, which are both skills to do with technology, but also skills to do with talent. So I look at that, I talk about the technology and talent balance.
Yeah. You know what? I find ironic that we have spent a significant amount of time to find ways to improve the relationship of a company with its customers, right? I mean, we now companies now have data and strategies and indicators and milestones on everything that pertains to the relationship with their customers. And I find ironic that we're not doing the same thing with our internal customers, which are our employees. And if we did, we still don't believe that matters that much. So, we were talking offline about remote work, right? You look at the data and people are saying, it's not that I want to work remotely all the time. It's that I want to have the flexibility to decide how I want to work. And I am still productive. I still get my work done if I am 2 days in the office, but I want to have the power to make that determination. We have the data telling us people want that. If our customers were saying that, we would give them whatever the hell they wanted. We would tell them, yes, you get your days off, whatever you want. But it's our employees saying that, and we are not giving them the same benefit, the same consideration that we are giving to our customers. Why? Why is that?
So it really starts a long way ago. I mean, a long time ago. It starts with the fact that, in the early 1900s, we believed that you pay somebody and that was it. They would do their work. Well, that is it. And, we talk about quiet quitting. I really hate some of these labels, but the quiet quitting actually isn't somebody slacking off. It's somebody doing their job and meeting those tasks. What we need these days is people to go above and beyond, not more than what they're paid, right? Because they are paid, they're doing the work that they're paid for, but we want them to really engage in being their best ideas. And when we're going to do that, then we need to do all these other things, because now we have the data that shows that to get people who are engaged, to really help people do their best work, we need to be doing different things. We need to be thinking about them individually and helping sort of manage them in different ways. Now, the data is relatively fresh. I mean, when I came into the workforce, we didn't think like that. We have the data now. Now, at the same time, you have managers, you have leaders and executives who, just like me, did not come into the workforce like that. So it's learning new skills at a time when there's so much more on our plates. We have so much that we're trying to deal with, and incredible technology change. So it's a lot to be dealing with at the same time. So I really do empathize with leaders and executives at all levels of the organization who are tasked with this, who have to meet the obligations of, for the shareholders. We'll talk about stakeholders, later on, if hopefully, but they need to be performing for the company, and then trying to develop these new skills and lead people in different ways. And the other piece of it is that if you've been working, I mean, if you're a freelancer or an entrepreneur, you know a lot more already about how you work, because you've had to, right? Freelancers only manage to be successful if they've worked out what their skills are, first of all, and two, how they work best, because they have to maximize their time. But if you've been working in a big corporate entity and you've had to go to work, let's say 8:30 or 9 to 5, 6, whatever it might be, you've never had to kind of go, well, do I work better in the morning or in the evening, or what environment is best for me? Because you didn't have any choice. Now, then we come the pandemic and we're forced in very, very different environments. And then we start going, so this element, I work better, and that under pressure, but I need some, interactions with people. So people have really started to understand a lot more about themselves. So now we can really take a good number of steps forward in really improving our performance, because we understand a lot better about ourselves. And then we can also be better managers and leaders because we understand more about our teammates.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to pick up on something that you said before during your response, which is that when we came into the workforce, things were different, right? And things will be different in 12 months from now than today. And maybe empathy, which we knew as a concept, right? I mean, we need to be empathetic and put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. It never entered into the sort of the work kind of the workplace or business conversations, and now it does, right? But I'm thinking, I actually wrote down, because I don't remember how it goes, but I think it was Albert Einstein who said something along the lines of, we can't solve today's problems with the same thinking or the same mindset we had when we created them, right? And I what I'm observing is that companies are trying to respond to a problem that has been going on for a long time, which is the problem of disengagement and decreased productivity. This is not a problem that originated with the pandemic. This has been going around for the past, I think, 20 or 30 years, at least in the United States. Decreased productivity. You look at the Gallup engagement data points, and since the year 2000, disengagement rates have been around anywhere between 60 and 70%, and have been steady at that number. And never did we do anything for this. And now we're saying, to solve those problems, we have to go back to the office, which we knew didn't work before. And I'm like, wait a second. So you're trying to solve something that you didn't solve for before with the same things that you were doing when you created those problems. Why don't you try something new?
Right. It's not logical. It really isn't logical. But it does, I think part of it is very practical. It's, can I, to be learning, as I said, to be learning these new skills, to be trying to engage each person individually on my team. I need to sort of say, Tom is like this, and Anthony is, needs, I can give him one milestone and he's good. But Margie, she loves me to be checking in with her twice a week. She's, performs just as well, but she just needs, check-ins because she wants to engage with me and chat about certain things. Somebody else needs course course correcting because they haven't been working as much on this particular, type of work in the task in the past. So I need to be paying that much more attention. I can't just tell people what to do. Now, if they can reframe it and look at them, so say, our the work, the business, how we're operating, we need to be that much more flexible and be pivoting and be so much more responsive to customers. And if our competitors are deploying some new technology, it means that our customers or prospects are going to be expecting different types of interactions or high level of service from us as a result. So we need to be on our toes the whole time.
Yeah.
That is really raising the bar on me. And so it's kind of like, well, can I do all of this at the same time?
Yeah.
So I'd rather have some things just go back to what I'm used to. Not that I necessarily think that that's going to be the solution that's really going to be productive. I don't think but I know that's familiar and I can deal with it. I can feel I can get my arms around it and being more in control, because what we're talking about now is, particularly at the speed, particularly when we're needing to make more decisions quickly, closer to the front line, it means I need to cede more. I need to sort of yield more responsibility, give it further down the line. And so I need to trust my employees, trust my team members. And trust is at the core of a lot of these issues, right? I mean, I had a sort of an aha moment earlier this year, which was, there's this idea of loyalty, and loyalty means sort of for older folks typically is to do with tenure. If they've been with me a long time, they're loyal. But with trust being an issue, if you think about it, in the 50s and 60s, when we had lifelong employment, the trust was created because I could trust the organization because I knew I had a job for life. So I didn't have to trust my leader. My leader didn't have to trust me. We developed the relationship that we did, but the trust, I felt safe in a way because I had a job.
You had a job.
I had a job
with stability.
Now, when that job security is just completely gone, how do you create that positive connection? How do you create the trust? It has to be actually between the people. It has to be between the leader and me. That is a whole different situation. And now we have seen that a lot of the issues, 78% of US companies are tracking their employees' keystrokes or, surveilling them with cameras and stuff like that. You're not doing very well in creating trust-based work environment. So the trust, I think, is at the core of a lot of these things. And you see the reports. There was an article that about farmers insurance, and it's in the article it said that the employer was concerned, or certain leaders were concerned about decreased productivity. Well, it's not necessarily to do with remote working or working from home. It's that we're working in a very different way. We're working under very different situations. We're having to deal, as I said, customer behaviors and how we're operating. So this is a period of transformation, and you're going to get a productivity dip as we start learning, as we're dealing with transformation. So, we need to be careful about what we're focused on, what the reason and the cause of some of these, productivity dips, and how we adjust for them. Sorry, long answer, but but there's a lot going on.
That's fantastic. And I appreciate that. And I don't want to, of course, have our conversation just about remote work or working from the office, but definitely I think empathy, to me, it's the answer to respond. How do we let our people, where do we let them work from, right? Because if you trust them, if you understand their realities, there's empathy in between, and you can tell, well, I know you are the single mother of, 2 kids, and your kids are, on summer break right now. It's okay if you work from home. I don't mind, right? Maybe we have to improve our communication channels so that we can trust more in each other. But when you talk to a leader, and whatever they are in the spectrum of, I call them all system thinkers, by the way, those people who are so, strongly clinging to the old ways of managing a leader, and they don't want to let that go. And the people that are more open-minded to new ideas. When you talk to any of them and you tell them, empathy can do this for you, these are the results of being more empathetic as a leader. These are the results of building a more empathetic workplace. What is that? What are those results that they get from building that culture of empathy, becoming more empathetic themselves in their teams and whatnot? What are the results that they can see over time?
Sure. So empathy and trust are very related. And in fact, Paul J. Zak has done some amazing work on trust. He was actually focused on what are the key elements for engagement. And it was trust. And trust in developing trust-based relationships, which are obviously sort of have a lot to do with empathy. There's to do with oxytocin and how that develops in the brain. But there was just going to some very specific research that came out recently. It was from EY. They did a 2023 empathy in business survey, and it said that 87% of US workers say empathy leads to better leadership. And US workers believe that mutually empathetic relationships increase efficiency by 88%, job satisfaction by 87%, creativity 87%, idea sharing 86%, and innovation 85%. Those are incredibly compelling. Then you talk about just, if you think about how do you get there? Well, if you feel safe, if you feel that somebody else understands you and values you and is connecting and bothering to connect, first of all, just simply bothering to try and connect with your experience. There are people who don't necessarily feel uncomfortable if they have to try and connect with the emotional experience of every single person. That could be draining. But caring to ask and making that connection and having a deeper relationship, that person is going to feel safer to speak up, to share their ideas. That's where the creativity and innovation, they have a sense of belonging, sense of community, so they feel connected from wherever they're working from. And it's easier to be engaged in their work because their manager sort of cares about what they're focused on, what different tasks they do better at. Okay, Enrique, let's focus you on some of this work that you really love. Of course, you have to do some other work that isn't your favorite, but it all goes together. And I'm really trying to focus you as your manager on stuff that you like. These are some of the things and so with better communication, better collaboration, brainstorming, innovation, all of those different things are going to help the organization in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so there's more and more compelling direct statistics, because it used to be sort of more indirect. It was sort of harder to kind of prove, but now there's so much more talk about empathy, so much more work that's been done on empathy, which is relatively recent, that the soft skills, which are really coming to the fore these days. And of course, when we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues before the pre-pandemic, and of course, obviously exacerbated during the pandemic, that particularly with younger workers trying to understand and preempt and connect and sort of be doing the check-ins so that things don't escalate and people can, issues that can be addressed or prevented before they get worse.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And by the way, since in Hacking HR, we've been writing a lot about empathy recently. Of course, I've been looking into the research and the data is compelling. Things such as teams that have higher levels of empathy from their managers are better at reducing customers' complaints, and customer turnover as well is decreased versus teams that have lower levels of empathy. Empathy also impacts job satisfaction and job engagement, which ends up becoming higher levels of productivity and higher levels of performance. So it's just the data is so compelling. Now, let me ask you this. I picked up a couple of things here from the chat, one from Keith and one from Adam that I want to ask you. I'm going to ask them together, even though they are a little bit different. The first one is this. We talk about empathy, and then you go to a company and then you tell a leader, if you're empathetic, these are all the things that you're going to achieve, right? You more satisfaction, more engagement, more productivity, higher performance. But all the systems that are in place in that organization are created for the individual, for competition, for you are promoted individually, you are given a rating on performance individually. So it seems that the systems that we have in place in our companies are the opposite or not conducive to creating the conditions to empathy. So that's one question. How do we resolve that? And the second question, a little bit related, is what happens when empathy is just a box to be checked and not something that happens genuinely, right? When you create an assessment system, an accountability system where you tell your leaders you have to be empathetic, and then it becomes disingenuous. It's just you do it because you're going to be given a bonus for doing that. So two-part question in there.
Sure. So, okay. So the individual system, yes, that is the internal competition is certainly not helpful. I think there can be a layer that's put on, let's just say in a sales team. That's sort of the most obvious one. There are individual targets, but there also can be a group, a team target that's put on top of that. And a sales team lead can be doing a lot of different things. I mean, I interviewed a very successful team lead at HubSpot, and in terms of what he was doing to connect people across the team, to help them sort of share their skills. One woman or one guy was particularly good in one area or really understood this type of customer problem, and so getting them to share skills so that they could each person be individually increasing their skills, their ability to connect and perform, but also making sure that there were these team goals, that there was a very strong sense of the team cohesion. And you then do go to sort of Adam Grant's book, Givers and Takers, and really successful individual, let's say, sales people can be very toxic to the overall success, and it is important not to be rewarding those people. It is, this is a big change, but you're not going to have the best overall results. You're going to lose people from teams if you're rewarding people who are not trying to be cohesive, trying to be team players, because that really does undermine the overall culture and undermines the values. You're rewarding somebody who is not upholding the values or in line with everybody else. So that's in terms of, so there are things that can be done on a team basis, even if it's you can have a team culture, and the team culture can be different from the department or the whole company. So that is one way as a leader that you can change it. And you can, even if your leader is not the most empathetic person, you can be encouraging more empathetic, more listening. Key thing is listening, more listening behavior, more thoughtful, checking in with your team members, and then, hopefully influencing your lead at the same time. So checking the empathy box. Yes, I mean, any disingenuous behavior is not going to be helpful because, and it can make it worse. Right? If you're asking, so Enrique, so how are you doing? And clearly I'm not listening to your answer, and I've forgotten your dog's name, and I can't remember whether you have any, kids or not, or where you went in your travels, even though I'm looking at all those amazing pictures behind you. If I don't really care, you're going to know. So just keep quiet in that case. Better not say anything.
It has to be genuine.
Yeah. And look, the thing is, some people, I may kind of go,
Sophie, we lost you in there for a second.
I don't know, but I think you can really still hear me. So if I can connect with anybody on some basis, right? So I love hiking. So I look at all those pictures and I'm like, oh my God, I can talk to you for hours about all the different places you've been. But you can find a connection with anybody about anything. There's something, whether it is the last TV show that I binge watched, it is whether I have dogs or have kids, or I'm from England. There are lots of different reasons. If you can find something to connect with somebody on, that gives you more common ground. That gives you more ability to empathize. When you can put yourself in their shoes, it just helps if you have some similarities, some common ground, or create shared memories. That's another way. If you really feel, so disconnected from someone, go, play darts, go bowling, some of those things where people don't typically have really strong skills, and you can sort of, muck in and be silly together. Well, that's what I do anyway when I go bowling. But those can be, fun shared memories that can set the sort of foundation for a stronger relationship where you can have better interactions.
Yeah, I love that. And, I want to go back to something that you said about the team's culture, right? And we started in Hacking HR, we started creating all this content about empathy and kindness and compassion. And of course, one of the questions that people were asking was, what happens if I don't have any decision-making power, I don't have any authority, I am not a leader, and, I won't make anything change in the organization. And ever since I started listening to those sort of excuses, I switched a little bit the way I was presenting these topics. And now I talk about how change happens in an organization. And I always say, it happens in three ways. At least in my view, it happens in three ways. Top down, when the CEO says, I want this to be this way, and that has to happen. Middle out, when it's, from those direct managers and direct leaders saying, I want my team to be like this, and they can influence down the line and up the line. And bottom up, which is when everybody acts in a way that is conducive to certain behaviors. And what I tell people is, well, if you're not a leader, but you're just an individual contributor, maybe you can't, and more likely, you won't be able to change the entire culture of the organization. But if you have two coworkers that you spend 80% of your time working with, you can be more empathetic to them. You can be more kind to them. You can be more compassionate to them. Yes, you won't be able to change the entire culture, but you can change the dynamics of your relationship with those two people. So you are exerting your power to influence a better culture, not at a whole organizational wide level, but at the level of your interactions with those people. So you have the power to build a more empathetic organization, to become more empathetic. And hopefully, when everybody sees what you're doing and say, people would probably think like, wow, how is this guy doing all these awesome things with that team? And then they dig deeper and they find out that you're being empathetic, right?
And you can also be saying, in addition to them noticing, you can also be verbalizing it and saying, oh, when, it was great because Tom and Enrique and I, we all had this really great conversation. And I listened so hard to what he said, and it was really interesting to me. And then when I talked to Antonio about this other thing, I heard these things which I hadn't heard before, and I talked and I shared that. So you're sharing some of the skills that you're using. You're sharing some of the how you got there, so that even if they don't register it overtly, they kind of go, well, maybe I might try that, because if I listen more to my coworkers, my team members, then maybe I'll learn more from them. And maybe particularly if I've got a competitive spirit and I'm a competitive team, I'm going to do that because I want to do, because also you can also be talking about, well, we managed to achieve blah, blah, blah because we did this. And I really think, and to get some data or sort of show those, those type of statistics. And, people react and respond and get energized by different things. So, different elements that you say, that you share, are going to be sort of helping people empathize based on, generated by different motivations.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's the role modeling of those behaviors, which, by the way, when it comes to kindness, and I don't know if there's true for this in empathy as well, but I'm going to guess that the answer would be yes. When it comes to kindness, you engage in an act of kindness to improve and the life of the recipient of that act of kindness. But of course, now we have the research that is telling us that the hormones that are released in our brains when we received an act of kindness are equally powerful in the giver of that act of kindness. So their life, whether they want it or not, is also improving. But this is the other part of it, which is related with what you're saying. And I think this is so powerful. The witness or the observer of an act of kindness is also, their life is also improving, and they are more motivated and inspired to engage in an act of kindness just because they saw two people engaging in an act of kindness, whether they had anything to do with it or not. So that communication process that you're talking about, telling others, this is what we're doing, we're just listening to each other and we're treating each other with respect, and these are the results. It turns that person that is listening to that conversation an observer of that act of empathy or kindness, therefore inspiring them, hopefully, to engage in similar act of kindness and empathy. And I think that's so powerful.
It is. And I will just make a point that empathy isn't necessarily about being kind.
Of course.
In my book, I actually don't talk about that sort of. The only time I mention the word kind is to say that empathy can be used for, it is when you're understanding someone, you can manipulate them.
Yeah.
So empathy with ethics is important. And when we are talking about empathy, we're typically, generally talking about the fact that we're going to be using the more information, that emotional connection and that cognitive connection, because that's, the potentially the hardest thing to do, is really understand the perspective of the other person, as well as
Yeah.
connecting with how they're feeling about it. So it can be used for, Machiavellian or, or not such great intent. But yes, so we do need to be thinking about what we're doing and how we're using that information. But the mirror neurons that you have in your brain, they are absolutely mirroring that same emotion. So if you are not to the same degree, but you are getting that sense of, I mean, that's how it works in terms of if I see you drop your phone and I go, oh, because I actually feel some of the feeling that you have, because that is, as far as Frans de Waal, the Dutch primatologist, it's like that's how we're recognizing, and Dr. Helen Rees of Harvard. Harvard, yes. They're sort of explaining that this is the sort of anthropological basis of it in terms of teaching us about reciprocity, teaching us about, human relationships. So I'm sort of being empathic. I'm helping you if you're in pain. So, and I feel that a little bit of, some of that pain, so that I will help you, and in the hope that you will help me in the future if something like that happens to me. So we it's a natural human sensibility to be acting in ways that are kind or are positively affecting the other person, because that's the nature of sort of progress that we want to make as human beings. We want to be working together more effectively and reducing conflict and having productive results.
No, that's fantastic, and thank you for clarifying that difference. I think I'm thinking about it, and I love when you mention empathy with ethics, right? I mean, it's the proper way, I guess, to to make sure that you use that empathetic superpower. Now, let me ask you this, and I know we're getting closer to the end of our conversation, but I want perhaps to ask you maybe one last question. But you talk in your book about human-centric systems. Can you define what that means, especially in the context of all this conversation that we're just having about empathy?
So I start out in the book and really sort of trying to set the context of where we are right now in terms of the future of work, because the book is really sort of focused on where we are and what we're trying to deal with. And I look at very much what I was speaking about at the very beginning about the fact that we're dealing with so much more technology, and we have, we're focused on the customer for one. So I talk about the customer journey, because it's also a good way of really connecting everybody in the organization. So the human-centric system is both the external, so it's the customer journey, and what aligning everybody in the company around the customer journey. So to really understand that and how you're going to serve in each individual customer best, and also trying to sort of reach out to them. And then it's sort of the yin and the yang. I kind of have a picture of a yin and yang, because it's not just external, it's also internal. So it's the employee journey. And that is from the first moment that you're reaching out to try and lure somebody attract somebody to the organization, to the onboarding, to all the different steps that they are through the organization, and to when they may leave the organization, and helping them in that, because what we're dealing with now is much more of a network system, that if somebody leaves the organization potentially because there isn't right now an opportunity for them to step up, internal talent mobility is still very, very hard. But if they go out to get more experiences, they can come back again. So it's really thinking about both the customer on a personal, individual basis, understanding that person really inside and out, and then also your employees and all the different needs that they may have. What kind of employee arrangement really suits them? Does it, freelancer? It could be, part-time. Not thinking that every single one of the ways that we've been working, the ways we've been constructing the employment agreement and arrangements in the past, we have more flexibility, we have more options, and that's what suits people in different ways. So all the different elements, both as I said, from the external to the internal, and that's the human-centric system, is the customer journey and the employee journey.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I think we're going to need a separate conversation just to talk about the human-centric systems that you refer to in your book, and how we can, we can effectively design them and roll them out in our organizations, especially given that we have so many more options today than we had in the past, and now we have to just rethink by being open-minded, we just have to rethink what works for our organizations, what works for our people, and what will deliver results for both. So
that makes
yeah.
the most important point for me out of all of that is that HR and IT and also FM, facilities management, become strategic. It is so critical for HR to have a strategic role, to have a strategic seat at the C-suite table, because it is so critical now to be thinking about how talent is going to, how you're going to work with talent, how they're going to be effective. And then we think about Gen AI and how that affects everything, and how it's going to be changing so many different things, and needing employees, your talent, to be flexible and be not afraid of the technology, but using it to the best advantage. So the strategic sort of shift that we now have for HR is a incredibly important point that I think comes out of that.
Yeah. And by the way, in addition to what you're saying, all we got to do is look at the top 10 most important concerns for business leaders today. And 8 of them have to do with people. A couple of them have to do with things that nobody individually controls, climate change or financial recessions, right? I mean, there's no one person that controls that. But the rest is, how do we attract talent? How do we retain talent? How do we reskill our talent? How do we speak the language of the newer generations? Things of the kind, right? And all of that has to do with people. Therefore, if that's not a strong case for HR to leave behind some of that transactional, administrative, back office mindset and embrace the powerful idea that we are business leaders, just as another CFO or CEO, but we're working from the people side. If that's not a strong case, man, I don't know what it is, because I tell you,
right. And they will find out, because there are many companies now that do get it, that do understand. And those are going to be so much more from a very, very basic level. If I join a company and that company isn't trying to help me stay competitive, if I'm a young person, if I'm a Gen Z particularly, and I'm going into an organization, I have no idea. There's a YouGov survey in 2019, 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds, so Gen Zs, sort of half of Gen Zs at that point, 54% think that they're going to do a job that doesn't exist yet. So that was before Gen AI, came up. So if they're thinking that way and they come into an organization, the only thing that's really important to them is to stay upskilled, to stay competitive, to be learning all the time. And if their employer or their manager isn't really helping them, aligned with the business needs, of course, really helping them, learn and be upskilled, why on earth would I stay? It doesn't make sense. It's worrying. I mean, I would be so anxious. So some of these things get very practical.
And the flip side of that is that sometimes you find business leaders saying, why am I going to invest in this if they are going to leave in a couple of years from now? Well, maybe they leave, but you want them to do not only their best while they stay here, but at the same time, they will become ambassadors, whether for the positive or the negative of your brand. I mean, the day they leave, they can say the most beautiful things about your company, or they can literally destroy you with one tweet. They can say whatever, it is. And then people in their generations or in their circles or in their communities, they are like, I don't want to work in this company.
Right.
I mean, if that's the case, because they trust that one tweet. Whether that's true or not, they trust that one tweet, right?
And more, I'm coming across organizations who, in two organizations so far, the way they've actually said it is, this person is on loan to me. This person is on loan. I'm going to invest in them. Therefore, and if they know that this is my mindset, that I'm going to invest in them, help them grow, and then wherever they go, it means they're going to engage as much as possible. You'll probably get them to stay as long as you possibly can. But particularly for smaller companies or particular divisions, if you want to get the best people, that's going to be the type of approach that's going to help you attract great people, because you're building them up, and you also, you can try and move them with somewhere else within the organization, which means you as a manager need to actually develop those relationships. But it's really trying to reframe I want this person, I want to keep them, because you can't necessarily help them grow in the way that they need to grow, just by keeping them in your organization. And, particularly now that organizations are much flatter than they used to be.
Yeah. And there are a couple of things that I know, can be an entire conversation, but now that I am connected, personally with a couple of teenagers, who are, they are Gen Zs, but, still not in the workforce. But I can tell a couple of things about them. Number one, how fast they learn.
Yeah.
Not because they are necessarily smarter or more intelligent than anybody in the past was, but now because they have all the tools that allow them to learn. They can learn in seconds. So that's the number one thing that I have observed. And the second thing that I observed is they get bored real quickly. So those two things, to me, create such unique challenges for organizations to keep them engaged, to keep them learning. But at the same time, what a gigantic possibility that you have somebody. If you thought about that same role 50 years ago, the person doing that role would have taken a couple of years to learn the skills to do that role. Now it takes a couple of months because you have the tools available to do that. But at the same time, the boredom that happens when you are doing the same for too long is evident in this new generation.
Yes, and I think some of that boredom, or they are attuned and have to learn quickly, and they're used to kind of like, oh, check this out, whatever, let me check this app out. Oh no, it's really good. Oh, this app, okay, now let me use this. So they're used to doing it like that, and they have to. I often refer to this Wall Street Journal article, which came out in April 2019, which said that the graduating class of that year were coming into jobs as new entrants into the labor force, with the sophistication of the work they were immediately having to do was 3 to 4 years more advanced than previous generations, because even by that point, so much of the tedious, repetitive work had been automated away. So what does that mean? It means I come into an organization, I'm immediately, it was talked about the fact that, I might have to go and, meet with clients within the first 3 months. That would never happen in the past, right? No. It would take me maybe a year or a year and a half before I'd be let into a room which had, clients in it. So the pressure on Gen Zs is also very high. And this goes to, and talking and just being open with HR leaders and HR managers who I know get very frustrated with the, oh my God, I can't believe that, what is it? 75% of Gen Zs believe that they should get a promotion within the first year. And in fact, I think 63% believe it should be within the first 9 months. That may be absolutely on target based on how fast they're having to learn, how many skills that they're actually taking on board, how much more they're needing to do immediately. So just
crunching the timelines.
Yes, you are, because of what we're going through and how many different skills. If you just look at the different skills that have been needed in the 5 years ago in PR or marketing, or data analysis, now it is extraordinary how much we've all had to learn. So and that's very much the same for the younger generation who are coming in, that promotions, particularly at those levels, could be warranted much, much faster. So I just sort of open that door a little bit.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's important because that's the way to really disengage, to disengage someone if they're kind of like, well, I work really, really hard. Oh, and just one last point on that as well. Please focus on results, rather than FaceTime is a whole thing as well. But if you focus on results and they manage to get something done within how many hours, it really doesn't matter. The most important thing is really to get the results. And if somebody is engaged and working and doing their job and excited about it, that's where you're going to get the most out of them, and they're going to stay.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I'm going to go back to what we were saying before. What an incredible opportunity for HR to step in and say,
oh my goodness,
our current work design, our current career management structures, they don't respond to these new generations anymore. I remember talking with this leader in a workplace where I worked. This was a lot of years ago, and he hired somebody who was very high level. He hired that person at a lower grade in the career ladder.
Right.
And what he told me was, because I want to give them opportunities to slowly grow in the company. And I'm like, they will leave way before they get that first promotion, because they will find out that to get that first promotion is going to take them 2 or 3 years, and that's not what they will do. He was an autism thinker, by the way. So that's why he said that. But
Yeah, I mean,
beautiful opportunity.
there's a lot of change. There are a lot of things, and
Yeah.
it's not that it's all. I mean, like, I am deep in the trenches, and I've been deep in these trenches for a long time. So this all is kind of clear to me. But for most people who they understanding how much has changed and not being daunted by it.
Yeah.
And, I
It's hard
myself,
to, yeah.
and needing to pivot my business. I did a lot of writing before, then I started my podcast. We're all moving with the times all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
And then,
yeah.
doing more videos. It's like, you just keep moving, and you learn new skills, and kind of like, learning video editing, and,
Yeah,
whatever it might
yeah,
be.
yeah.
We have to keep moving, and everybody has to do it. And it, sometimes you're like, oh, really? Like,
Yeah.
another thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So-
So, Sophie, thank you so much for spending this time with me, sharing all of these amazing insights, inspiring our community, to know, number one, the challenges that we have ahead, but also the incredible number of opportunities and possibilities that we have to do better, to create better workplaces, to create better work
Yeah.
with empathy, with human-centric systems, and by catering to those new generations, which can, by the way, whatever we do for them can teach us how to improve for the rest of us, right? That are
For
not
everybody.
part of those younger generations. So, Sophie, thank you so much for being here, and everybody who's tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in to this Hacking HR live conversation. And if you have missed any of our previous live chat series, please just go to our website, hackinghr.io, click on live chats. They are not live anymore, of course, but all of them are there for you to check out. Great amount of information, knowledge for you to learn from and to draw value out of. So, Sophie and everybody, thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.